She thought she had been stood up, that another attempt at love had crumbled before it even began. But when two 6-year-old girls marched through that coffee shop door with a mission in their eyes and secrets on their lips, everything changed. They were not supposed to be there. Their father had no idea, and what they were about to reveal would turn a failed date into the beginning of something neither she nor he ever saw coming. Imani Ellis, a beautiful black woman with warm brown skin and natural curls pulled into a loose bun, checked her phone once more, a quiet flicker of doubt crossing her face. She sat alone at the corner table of the Willow and Bean Café, her fingers wrapped around a ceramic mug of chamomile tea that had long since gone cold. The autumn warmth that usually made this place feel cozy now felt suffocating. Around her, couples leaned into whispered conversations, their laughter punctuating the soft jazz playing overhead. She was the only person sitting alone. Imani told herself she would give him a little more time, and then she would text Talia, her colleague who had set this whole thing up, and tell her that blind dates just were not her thing. After dedicating herself fully to her veterinary practice, maybe she was not ready. Maybe she had been right to keep her walls up. Just one coffee date, Talia had insisted recently, cornering Imani in the clinic break room. His name is Darius Hale, an architectural engineer, and Imani, he is wonderful. Trust me. But trust was hard. And sitting here watching the door, feeling that familiar sting of disappointment creeping in, trust felt impossible. The bell above the door chimed. Imani looked up, hope flickering despite herself. But it was not a man in his 30s. It was not Darius Hale. It was two identical little girls with deep brown skin, bright brown eyes that sparkled with intelligence, and thick, gorgeous curls pulled into two puffy ponytails secured with bright pink beads that clicked softly when they moved. They could not have been more than 6 years old. They wore matching red jackets over what looked like school uniforms. Their small hands clasped together as they surveyed the room with startling determination. And then those eyes landed on Imani. Before she could process what was happening, the girls marched straight toward her table with the confidence of tiny soldiers on a mission. The taller one, by maybe half an inch, stopped directly in front of Imani, tilted her head, and asked with complete seriousness, "Are you Miss Imani?" Imani blinked, caught completely off guard. "Yes, I am." "And you are?" "I'm Layla," the girl announced with the formality of a diplomat, then gestured to her sister with a sweeping hand motion. "This is Ruby. Our daddy's sorry he's late." The world seemed to tilt slightly. These were Darius's daughters. They had to be. But Talia had not mentioned children, had not mentioned twins, had not mentioned any of this. "He had to stay at work," Ruby added softly, her voice gentler than her sister's, more careful, "because of an emergency." Layla quickly covered her sister's mouth with her hand, her eyes going wide. "Ruby!" Imani's confusion must have been written all over her face because Layla sighed, an old weary sigh that seemed far too mature for a 6-year-old, and pulled out the chair across from Imani. She sat down with purpose, tugging her sister down beside her. "Okay," Layla said, folding her small brown hands on the table like she was about to conduct a business meeting. "We should tell the truth." "The truth?" Imani echoed, leaning forward despite herself. "Daddy doesn't know we're here," Ruby whispered, guilt flickering across her small face like a candle in the wind. Imani's eyes widened. "He doesn't? Wait, what?" "But he is sorry he's late," Layla insisted, her voice firm. "We know because we heard him on the phone last night." Imani leaned forward, drawn in despite herself. "Last night?" Ruby nodded, her curls bouncing with emotion, the pink beads clicking softly. "We were supposed to be asleep, but we heard him in the hallway. Someone called about a big problem at the new library building, something about the foundation. He kept saying he couldn't believe this was happening tonight. He said he had something really important at the Willow and Bean Café." "And you two figured out that was here?" Imani asked, a smile tugging at her lips despite the absurdity of the situation. "We are very smart," Layla said matter-of-factly, straightening her shoulders with pride. "We remembered the name because Daddy wrote it on the calendar in the kitchen. He circled it 3 times and drew a smiley face next to it." Something warm flickered in Imani's chest. A smiley face. This man she had never met had been excited enough to draw a smiley face. "He was so excited," Ruby continued, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper, like she was sharing a precious secret. "He ironed his shirt yesterday. Daddy never irons. He says ironing is for people with too much time on their hands." Imani could not help but laugh, soft and genuine. These two little girls, sitting across from her with their earnest faces and their conspiracy, had just turned her disappointing evening into something else, something unexpected and strangely wonderful. So when we heard him say he might be late because of work, we made a plan, Layla explained, her eyes bright with the memory of their scheme. We asked Mrs. Henderson, she's our babysitter, to bring us here. We told her it was really, really important. Imani glanced through the window. Sure enough, there was an elderly black woman with silver locks and kind eyes sitting in a sedan parked at the curb, watching the girls with a mixture of bewilderment and patience. When she caught Imani's eye, she waved with a resigned smile. We begged her, Ruby admitted, her cheeks flushing darker. We might have cried a little. Strategic crying, Layla corrected firmly, like she was explaining a military tactic. It was necessary for the mission. Imani pressed her lips together to keep from laughing outright. These girls were something else entirely. So, would you like to sit with me for a bit, maybe have some hot chocolate? Their faces lit up like Christmas morning, joy radiating from them in waves. Layla jumped out of her chair and ran to the window, gesturing wildly to Mrs. Henderson, who sighed deeply but nodded with understanding. When the girls settled back into their seats, Imani caught the barista's attention, a young black man with locks and a friendly smile, and ordered 2 hot chocolates with extra whipped cream. As they waited, she studied Layla and Ruby more carefully. Beneath their confidence and determination, there was something else, a weight, a sadness that children their age should not have to carry. So, Imani said gently, careful with her words, "Tell me about your dad. Does he go on many dates?" The question hung in the air for a moment. The twins exchanged a glance, some silent communication passing between them. In that way only twins could manage. And then Layla shook her head slowly. "Never," she said quietly, all the bravado gone from her voice. "You're the first one since Mommy went to heaven." The coffee shop noise, the hiss of the espresso machine, the chatter of other customers, the clinking of cups, all of it seemed to fade into the background. Imani felt her heart clench, her breath catching slightly in her throat. "When did that happen?" she asked, her voice soft as silk. "Not long after we started pre-K," Ruby said, her small hands fidgeting with the edge of her jacket. "She got really sick, really fast. The doctor said it was something with her brain, an aneurysm." The word appeared in Imani's mind, clinical and cold, but she did not say it out loud. Instead, she reached across the table and gently squeezed Ruby's hand, feeling the small fingers curl around hers. "I'm so sorry," Imani whispered. "Daddy took care of us all by himself," Layla said, and there was fierce pride in her voice now, the kind that comes from witnessing true strength. "He learned how to braid hair from YouTube videos." "YouTube videos?" Imani asked, charmed by the image. "He watched them night after night," Ruby said, a small smile breaking through her sadness like sunshine through clouds. "He messed up a lot at first. My braids were all lumpy and kept falling out. But he kept trying," Layla added quickly. "Even when we said it was okay that we could just wear ponytails, he said Mommy would want us to have pretty hair, so he was going to learn, and now he's really good." The hot chocolates arrived topped with mountains of whipped cream that threatened to spill over the edges. The girls carefully lifted their mugs, trying to sip without getting cream on their noses. They failed spectacularly, and soon both had white mustaches that made them look like tiny, serious old men. Imani laughed, the sound bubbling up from a place inside her that had been quiet for too long, genuine and light like something loosening in her chest. "He makes the best grilled cheese sandwiches too," Ruby said, licking whipped cream from her upper lip. "With 3 kinds of cheese. He says the secret is low heat and patience. And he sings to us every night," Layla continued, her voice softer now, more vulnerable. "Mommy's favorite songs. His voice isn't as pretty as hers was, but we don't tell him that, we just listen and remember." Imani felt tears prick at her eyes. She imagined this man she had never met, this Darius Hale staying up late watching braiding tutorials, determined to give his daughters some semblance of normalcy, learning to navigate grief while still showing up for 2 little girls who needed him to be everything. "Daddy was really nervous about tonight," Ruby confided conspiratorially, leaning closer. "He tried on different shirts we watched from the hallway." "The different shirts?" Imani asked, completely charmed. "And he practiced what to say in the mirror," Layla added. "We weren't supposed to be watching, but we peeked through his bedroom door. It was cracked open just a little bit." "What did he practice saying?" Imani asked, genuinely curious now. Layla straightened up and deepened her voice in an attempt to sound like her father. "Hi, I'm Darius. Nice to meet you." She shook her head dramatically. Then he tried, "Hello, Imani. No, that's not." Then again, "Hi, Imani. I'm Darius Hale." She paused for effect. He finally just said a bad word and decided to just be himself. Imani laughed, really laughed, and it felt like something inside her chest was loosening, opening up after being closed for so long. "He really wanted to be here," Layla said, her tone serious again, older than her years. "Daddy doesn't break promises, like, ever. That's why we knew the work thing must be really, really important. He designs buildings to keep people safe. If something's wrong with the foundation, the whole building could fall down," Ruby explained earnestly. "He always says safety is his responsibility." Imani was beginning to understand. These two little girls sitting across from her were not just adorable conspirators. They were protectors. They were watching out for their father the same way he had been watching out for them. They were a team, a unit forged in grief and love. "You two must be very proud of him," Imani said softly. Both girls nodded in perfect unison, a mirror image of agreement. "He's the best daddy," they said together, their voices overlapping in harmony. Then Ruby's expression shifted, becoming somber, shadows crossing her small face. "But sometimes he's sad," she admitted, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "He looks at Mommy's picture when he thinks we're asleep. We see him standing in the hallway, just staring at it. Sometimes his shoulders shake." Imani's throat tightened, emotion swelling there. "That's why we were happy when Aunt Talia said she found someone nice for him to meet," Layla explained. "We want him to smile more, like he used to, like in the old pictures." Aunt Talia, the pieces clicked into place. Talia was Darius's sister-in-law. That was why she had been so insistent about this date, so determined to make it happen. "We saw him this morning," Ruby said, and now there was a hint of brightness returning to her voice. "Daddy was humming while he made breakfast. Daddy only hums when he's really happy. He made special pancakes shaped like butterflies," Layla added with a grin. "Just because. He said it was a good day." Imani's phone buzzed against the table. She glanced down at the screen. "Talia, have you heard from Darius? He's not answering his phone. Everything okay?" Imani looked back up at the twins. "Girls, your dad really doesn't know you're here? For real?" "His phone is probably in his truck," Layla said with certainty. "He always forgets it when he's looking at blueprints. He says they make him focus too hard on everything else." "He's probably almost done, though," Ruby said hopefully. "He told someone on the phone he just needed a little time to check everything and make sure it was safe." An idea formed in Imani's mind. Wild and impulsive and maybe a little crazy, but as she looked at these two brave little girls who had orchestrated this entire intervention, who loved their father so fiercely they could not bear to see him lose this chance at happiness, she could not help but smile. "I have an idea," Imani said, leaning forward with a conspiratorial whisper. "What if we brought dinner to your daddy? If he's been working hard, he's probably hungry." The transformation was instantaneous. Layla and Ruby's faces lit up like they had just been told Christmas was coming early, like every wish they had ever made was coming true at once. "Really?" they gasped in perfect unison, their voices rising with excitement. "Really?" Imani confirmed. "What's his favorite food?" "Chinese food," Layla exclaimed, bouncing in her seat with such enthusiasm she nearly knocked over her hot chocolate. "From the Jade Lantern Bistro, he loves their orange chicken." "But he always orders sweet and sour pork, too," Ruby added quickly. "And fried rice, lots and lots of fried rice. And spring rolls, the crispy ones, not the soft ones." Imani pulled out her phone and quickly searched for the restaurant. "Then let's order all of that, and maybe some extra for the other people working with him." As Imani placed the order, the girls continued talking, their words tumbling over each other in their excitement. They told her about how their father had learned to sew just to fix their favorite stuffed animals when they got torn, how he never missed a school play or a parent-teacher conference, even if it meant leaving work early and making up the hours late at night, how he built them a treehouse, a project that took him many weekends of work until his hands were calloused and sore. "The treehouse has a secret password," Ruby whispered, leaning close like she was sharing state secrets. "It's Mommy's Angels, 'cause that's what she used to call us." "Daddy says we have her eyes," Layla said softly, touching her own face, and her smile, and her laugh. "She was a music teacher," Ruby explained, her voice filled with pride. "She taught little kids to love singing. That's why Daddy sings to us every night. He's trying to keep her music alive in the house." Imani had to blink back tears. She had come to this coffee shop expecting a simple blind date, maybe an awkward hour of small talk, maybe a polite goodbye and a white lie about calling later. Instead, she was sitting with two extraordinary little girls who were teaching her about love, about resilience, about showing up even when life breaks your heart into pieces. Before long, they were in Mrs. Henderson's sedan, bags of fragrant Chinese food piled on their laps, heading toward the construction site on the edge of town. The elderly babysitter had been filled in on the plan and seemed torn between admiration for the girls' romantic scheming and concern about Darius's reaction. "That man is going to have a heart attack when he sees you all," Mrs. Henderson said with a chuckle, her silver locks swaying as she shook her head. "But those girls have good instincts. Always have." The construction site loomed ahead, a skeletal structure that would become the new public library, lit by temporary floodlights that cast long, dramatic shadows across the lot. It looked like the setting of a movie, all angles and light and possibility. They found Darius in the temporary office trailer, rolling up blueprints while talking to two other workers, both black men in hard hats and work boots. Their faces were tired from a long day. Even from outside, Imani could see the exhaustion in Darius's posture, the tension in his broad shoulders. His sleeves were rolled up to his elbows, revealing strong forearms marked with a few old scars. His dark skin glistened slightly with sweat under the harsh trailer lights. His short fade was neat despite the long day, and there were what looked like smudges of dirt on his navy blue button-down shirt, the shirt he had chosen so carefully. He was clearly wrapping up, putting papers into folders, with the focused efficiency of someone who had just solved a critical problem and could finally breathe again. Layla knocked on the trailer door, 3 quick, confident raps that echoed in the quiet evening. Darius looked up, his pen still in his hand. His eyes, deep brown and expressive, framed by long lashes, landed on his daughter's first. His expression cycled through confusion, shock, and dawning horror in the space of a few seconds. Then his gaze shifted to Imani standing behind them, and he froze completely, his whole body going still. "Layla, Ruby, what are you? How did you—" He stopped mid-sentence, his eyes still locked on Imani. "You're Imani," he said. And it was not a question. His voice was deep, rich, with a slight rasp to it. "You're here, with my daughters." "Surprise," Layla announced, throwing her arms up triumphantly like a game show host. "We brought dinner. We didn't want Miss Imani to think you forgot about her," Ruby added, her voice earnest and sweet. Darius's co-workers, clearly sensing the delicate nature of the situation, quickly grabbed some of the takeout bags with knowing grins. "We'll just, take these and go eat outside," one of them said, winking at Darius. "Good luck, boss. You're gonna need it." They disappeared into the night, leaving Darius alone with Imani and the twins in the small trailer. For a moment, no one spoke. Darius just stared, his mouth slightly open, clearly trying to process how his 2 6-year-old daughters had somehow tracked down his blind date and brought her to a construction site outside of town. "Mrs. Henderson brought us," Layla offered helpfully, sensing her father's next question. "We asked very nicely." "We heard you on the phone last night," Ruby confessed, her voice small now, worried about being in trouble, "about the emergency, and we saw how excited you were about tonight," Layla continued, rushing to explain. "You drew a smiley face on the calendar. You never draw smiley faces." Darius's handsome face flushed darker. "You saw that?" "We see everything," Layla said matter-of-factly. Darius ran a hand over his face, his fingers trembling slightly. Imani watched the gesture, noting how his eyes kept darting between her and his daughters, like he could not quite believe any of this was real. "I am so sorry," he said finally, looking directly at Imani. His voice was deep, genuine, full of embarrassment and something else she could not quite name. "This isn't, I was just finishing up. I thought I could make it work. Get there just a little late, maybe text you an apology. I had no idea they would—" "Rescue your date?" Imani offered, a smile playing at her lips. "We didn't rescue it," Layla protested indignantly. "We saved it. There's a difference." "The date was getting away," Ruby explained with utmost seriousness. Despite his obvious embarrassment, Darius laughed, a real, genuine laugh that transformed his entire face. The exhaustion melted away, replaced by something warmer, lighter. Imani saw it then, the man his daughters had described, the one who made butterfly pancakes and learned to braid hair and sang lullabies even when his voice cracked with emotion. "My little rescuers," he said softly, pulling both girls into a hug. They wrapped their arms around his waist, and for a moment the 3 of them were their own complete unit, a family. When Darius straightened up, he looked at Imani again, and this time there was vulnerability in his eyes, raw and honest. I understand if you want to forget this ever happened. Having your blind date crashed by two 6-year-olds and turned into a construction site dinner with sawdust and emergency foundation repairs wasn't exactly the plan. Imani looked at Layla and Ruby, who were watching her with identical anxious expressions, their small hands clasped together tightly, hoping desperately that she would not leave. She thought about the past hour, about hot chocolate and whipped cream mustaches, about stories of YouTube braiding tutorials and 3-cheese grilled cheese sandwiches, and a man who circled a date on his calendar with a smiley face because he was allowing himself to hope again after a long period of grief. Actually, Imani said, meeting Darius's eyes directly, your daughters are extraordinary. They get that from their mother, Darius said automatically, then caught himself. His expression faltered, fear flashing across his face. I didn't mean to. It's okay, Imani said gently. They told me about her. She must have been wonderful. Something shifted in Darius's face, the defensiveness, the fear of judgment, the expectation of discomfort. It all softened. She was, he said simply. She would have laughed so hard about this, the girls staging a romantic intervention. Daddy, Ruby tugged on his sleeve. The orange chicken's getting cold, and Miss Imani probably hasn't eaten either, Layla pointed out pragmatically. Darius looked down at the bags of food, then back at Imani. Would you like to have dinner here? It's not the coffee shop and there's sawdust everywhere, but I'd love to. I'd love to, Imani interrupted, and she meant it with her whole heart. They cleared a space on the desk, pushing aside blueprints and clipboards and safety reports. Darius found some paper plates in a supply cabinet, apologizing for the lack of proper dinnerware. As they spread out the Chinese food, the girls chattered excitedly, telling their father about their adventure while he shot Imani apologetic looks that gradually transformed into something else. Gratitude, wonder, tentative hope. So you really practiced your introduction? Imani teased as she spooned fried rice onto her plate. Darius groaned, covering his face with one hand. You told her about that? The blue shirt was best, Ruby noted seriously, studying her father. That's the one you picked. Imani glanced at the shirt, wrinkled now from hours of work, but still clearly chosen with care. It's a good choice, she said softly. Darius met her eyes, and the look that passed between them made Imani's breath catch. It was brief, barely a second, but it was there. Recognition, attraction, possibility. Daddy, Ruby said suddenly, breaking the moment. Are you going to ask Miss Imani on another date, a real one this time, where you actually show up on time? Layla added helpfully. Darius nearly choked on his spring roll. Girls, I like pancakes, Imani said casually, her eyes twinkling. I hear someone makes them in funny shapes. The twins gasped in perfect delighted synchronization. Yes, Daddy, ask her to Saturday pancakes. Darius looked at Imani, and there was something raw and hopeful in his expression that made her heart skip. Would you like to come for Saturday morning pancakes? He asked. I promise I'll actually be there this time. No foundation emergencies, no disappearing acts. 8 o'clock? Imani suggested. 8 o'clock, and I'll even wear the blue shirt. It's a date, Imani said. Behind Darius's back, Layla and Ruby high-fived each other with barely contained glee. Mission accomplished, Layla whispered to her sister, but not quite quietly enough. I heard that, little conspirator, Darius said, reaching over to ruffle her hair affectionately. The morning arrived with golden autumn sunlight streaming through the windows. Imani stood on Darius's front porch, suddenly nervous in a way she had not been at the construction site. Before she could knock, the door flew open. You came, you came, you came! Layla and Ruby shrieked in unison, still in their matching butterfly pajamas. They grabbed Imani's hands and pulled her inside with surprising strength. The house smelled like butter and vanilla and coffee, warm and lived in and welcoming. Children's drawings covered the refrigerator. A basket of clean laundry sat on the couch, half folded. And there in the kitchen was Darius. He wore the blue shirt, freshly ironed this time, and jeans, and he had a smudge of flour on his left cheek. When he saw Imani, he smiled, lighter, brighter, more himself. You made it, he said with relief. I made it, and I'm very curious about these famous butterfly pancakes. The morning unfolded like a dream. Darius flipped pancakes while the girls showed Imani their art project. They ate at the kitchen table, laughter filling the spaces between conversation. After breakfast, Ruby appeared with a hairbrush. Daddy's braids are good, but could you try? Imani's heart melted. I'd love to. She sat with Ruby between her knees, gently brushing curls. Across the room, Darius watched. When their eyes met, something tender passed between them. Can we show Miss Amani the treehouse? Layla asked. Outside, the treehouse sat in a large oak tree, weathered wood with a rope ladder. Darius had built it with his own hands. You have to know the password, Ruby whispered. The twins looked at each other, then Ruby leaned close. Mommy's angels. Inside, cushions lined the floor. Drawings covered the walls. In one corner sat a framed photo of a beautiful black woman with warm brown skin and a radiant smile. That's Mommy, Layla said. She was beautiful, Amani whispered. Daddy built this the summer after she died, Ruby said. He worked on it every weekend. I needed to build something permanent, Darius said quietly. Later, Darius and Amani sat on the porch steps with coffee. I haven't done this in a long time, Darius said. Let someone in. It's terrifying. I know. I spent a long time avoiding it. Amani, I need to be honest. I come with complications, 2 of them. They're my whole world. I wouldn't want it any other way, Imani said. Darius, your daughters didn't scare me off. They're the reason I'm here. And the way you love them, the way you show up every day, that's the most attractive thing I've ever seen. Darius's eyes glistened. I haven't felt this way in a long time. I didn't think I could again, and it's scary because last time I loved someone this much, I lost her. Imani took his hand. I'm scared too, but being scared means it matters. Means it's real. Yeah, Darius said, but it does. As time went on, Imani attended school, plays, brought coffee to construction sites, went to pumpkin patches. She helped with Halloween costumes, butterfly wings made of wire hangers and tissue paper. Their mother would have loved this, Darius said quietly. She would have loved you. Their first kiss happened on a snowy evening. Darius walked Imani to the door. I don't want you to go, he said. I don't want to go either. He reached up, tucking hair behind her ear. Can I? She kissed him before he could finish. It was soft, then deepened into something sure and certain. When they pulled apart, Darius pressed his forehead to hers. I'm falling in love with you. I'm already there, Imani whispered. Upstairs, 2 little girls peeked through the banister with wide smiles. Daddy's happy again, Ruby whispered. We did good, Layla confirmed. After some time, Darius stood at the same coffee shop with a velvet box. The girls were with Mrs. Henderson waiting. When Imani arrived, she looked confused. I thought we were meeting at the restaurant. Come sit, I wanted to bring you here to where it all started. Months ago, I was supposed to meet you here, Darius continued. I was late, I thought I'd ruined everything, but 2 little girls had other plans. Imani's eyes glistened. They brought me back to life, but you gave me permission to live again. He pulled out the box. You walked into our lives when we needed you most. Imani Ellis, will you marry me? Imani nodded. Yes, 1,000 times yes. The bell chimed. We knew it. Layla and Ruby burst through the entrance. The girls crashed into them. We picked the ring, Ruby announced. I love it. I love you both so much, Imani said. Darius wrapped his arms around all 3. They became what they were meant to be. A family. Eventually, Imani stood in a white dress in the backyard. Layla and Ruby walked down the aisle in butterfly dresses, carrying a white rose for the empty chair for the mother whose love had shaped these daughters. I came looking for a date, Imani said. I found 2 matchmakers. They taught me that love doesn't always arrive on time. Sometimes it's late. Thank you for choosing me. You gave me permission to love again, Darius said. I love you forever. When they kissed, Layla and Ruby cheered. Imani stood near the treehouse and whispered, Thank you for raising such beautiful souls. I'll take care of them. Darius's arms wrapped around her. She would have loved you. They watched Layla and Ruby play, their butterfly wings catching the light. Sometimes love doesn't arrive on time. Sometimes it's late, carried by 2 girls who refuse to let it slip away. Sometimes you walk into a coffee shop and walk out with a family. That's the thing about second chances. When you're brave enough to say yes, that's when the real story begins.